if someone flirts with my husband, have at it. That means I got a good trophy over there, right? If he's enjoying the company in the space, if it's making him smile, he's enjoying it. I'm like, have at it. Let the woman flirt with him. Let the guy, give him a compliment. They should. They should, right? That means I picked a great guy.
This is Relatable, Relationships Unfiltered.
Today I'm hanging out with the hilarious and insightful Lamont White, aka the gay dating coach. We're chatting about how everyone gets jealous, including us, but hey, we're working on it. So Lamont, do you get jealous?
Oh Lord, today I think I probably get jealous once a week. I try to pretend like I don't, but I'm human. I have desires, I have insecurities, believe it or not.
For sure.
And sometimes that stuff comes up, and it's a struggle to manage it. I'm telling you.
It really is. I love how you say that you try not to show it, because I'm like completely in that boat of like, jealous, please, like do your thing. I'm not even worried about it, but we all know I'm worried about it.
Yeah. So usually I have to go walk around the block, and then I can be like, okay, let me talk about it, because had I said what I wanted to say at the time, it wouldn't have been good.
What type of things make you what type of things trigger the jealousy for you, maybe more than others?
Yeah, so it could either be like in my current relationship with my husband, if we might be out in a social place and there's a guy that is like in his face, or even a woman sometimes, believe it or not.
I believe it.
And I'm like, why is she getting all this attention? Hello, I'm over here. You don't see all this goodness. Like what is going on? So I usually have to check myself about that.
Does he get jealous?
He acts like he doesn't. So he does.
But he definitely does. Do you try to make him jealous?
No. I want no conflict. I like things to be accommodating and just like smooth and easy. I feel like we're already enough, personalities. If you meet my husband, you'll understand. But like we already big personalities, so we try to make things as smooth as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. So I wanted to talk about this topic because I get a lot of DMs from people asking about me touching on the topic of jealousy in my content. And I really haven't a whole lot, but I'm like, that would be a good conversation to have, because first and foremost, jealousy is so common. Like as much as you're saying, people deny it frequently because it appears weak or needy or all of those things that we don't want to be. So people deny it, but the reality is it does come up. But I really think of jealousy as like when we have a fear of like a threat to the connection, it creates those feelings in our body of the threat state. I mean, truly. And that is, as you're describing, if somebody's in our partner space and they're getting more of their attention than we are, or even social media is such a platform for jealousy.
With the needs to have likes, shares, and people making comments and sending you friend requests, or just like the growth on your social media presence. That can be, it can get in the way. It can also sometimes occupy date time, right? Yeah. Like if we're supposed to be on a date, but you want to scroll on Instagram, why is Instagram getting your attention? Like, what's going on? Like,
such a good point. Yeah. So it not always being necessarily a person, but something that's pulling away their attention in general. How do you work with your clients on jealousy when that comes up as a primary topic or something that is creating conflict? Because that does tend to be one of those topics that are like, oh, they're just so jealous. We fought again because they're just so jealous. They're so possessive. Where do you kind of start with all of that?
Yeah. And so Liz, I primarily work with men, and men are some of the toughest guys, or I say individuals, to like really talk about their emotions. And, so I say the first thing you have to do is acknowledge it. Acknowledge that jealousy at some point in your relationship is going to creep its ugly head up, and you're going to experience that. That's normal. Like if you don't, then you might be a narcissist. You might not be human. You might be a robot. So like it is natural to have those feelings, because We all want to be desired. We all want to feel prioritized. We all want to feel like we are achieving things and that we're being recognized for that. And when we don't, that's when jealousy starts to come in. And it's about acknowledging it and saying, hey, babe, yeah, I don't like that. Or that makes me feel a certain type of way. Or I need to start being more of a priority in your life. Yeah.
Which can be really hard to do, like if you don't have a partner who's receptive to it. And like when you're talking about jealousy comes up unless you're a narcissist, I actually see that on the contrary. I see individuals with narcissistic tendencies tend to be some of the most jealous individuals.
Yeah.
That there's a fragile ego that they're operating with, right? So they getting the esteem and the attention, that is all a really big deal for them. So when they don't, they're actually the ones that I generally see get more activated by that. And then the willingness, though, to share it with your partner, to share it and to say that it can feel so embarrassing for me, at least. Like, that's like, I want to pretend like I've got it all together. Nothing phases me. So to say like, yo, that comment you left on that girl's whatever, I wasn't really all about that. Like, to me, I'm like, you look crazy. That's how I feel for me personally.
Yeah, but I think your response is something that is natural. Sure. I think when I talk to my clients, I'm like, that happens, right? That's we can address. The more challenging aspect is when someone starts to manipulate you because they are not getting what they want, or they can't appropriately say, hey, I'm insecure. So they purposely do other things to make you give them attention, or
let's talk about
make you feel like you have to do something. And you're like, wait a minute, where am I? Why am I in this relationship, right?
Yeah, no, such a good point. Yeah, so the jealousy that, actually, I probably could fall into that category at times for sure. Like, because it is so hard to say. So instead, it might come across passive aggressively, or it might come across as wanting to send a message without sending the message, which obviously I'm highly aware that is not the best approach to go. But I get it when people do that. But I think looking at it on the spectrum, right, that it's normal to maybe not want to share right away. I do end up sharing it inevitably when I realize what an asshole I'm being. And that's more embarrassing than being jealous in the first place. So eventually I will say something. But I think it's like figuring out how to, even if it takes you a minute to come around to it, so that you're not, as you're describing, then you're becoming, gaslighting or manipulative, which creates even more destruction.
Yeah, but I think it's, Liz, let me use the word appropriate. I think it's sweet. I think it's cute. I think it's attractive when your partner is vulnerable and is saying, oh, I didn't like that comment you left there. Or you were paying that person so much attention, it made me feel this way. I feel like you have taken the mask off. You are being intimate. And I think even if you're dating someone, if someone can do that, I think that's a green flag. People always talk about red flags and run, but I think it's a green flag because they trust you enough with their heart and saying, I'll be vulnerable with you and tell you my true feelings.
Yeah, and isn't that such a good point that I completely agree. And that's such a turn on when somebody I'm dating is willing to show that side, that they're willing to take the mask off, that they will be vulnerable. Yet that's the irony of that. And I see this with my clients a lot, so I think it's sexy when they do it, but the thought of me doing it is so
yes, it's like, oh my God, I have to practice what I preach. And then it's like removing the pride, sucking it up, and just saying, let me say it in a nice way so that he can hear it, right? Or that she can hear it, and it doesn't come across as the blame game. Like, you did this, like it's your fault, but it's really me. It's what I got going on right here.
What do you think is often, so obviously there's a whole range, but what are some common things that lead to jealousy, either that you've noticed for yourself or that you see with your clients, tying into attachment and those type of traumas? Do you notice a theme of people's histories that are more likely to lead to jealousy?
So there are a number of things. I think one, for men, unfortunately, men, we have been conditioned, socialized to like be conquerors, protectors. And that means that we have to, like in modern day, we have to succeed and accomplish things, right? So we have to excel in our jobs, in our careers, in our finances, in our home life. And when we aren't doing that, like we get laid off, we don't get the promotion, the money's not where it needs to be, that does something with our ego. We then become insecure. So any little thing that occurs, it sets us off, right? And I have seen that in some of my past relationships where I was not there financially. So the person could, sneeze, or like they could be doing great at work. And I'm like, you don't just spend all that time at work.
What are you doing over there?
Right.
Expand your career, do well for yourself. What is this?
Right. I'm like, forget that job. You should be over here. But no, that has to do with me because back then I wasn't where I wanted to be as a man financially. So I would sabotage relationships because I would say, hey, you should prioritize me. Instead, like, no, my partner actually should not have to build me up. I should work on those things myself.
Well, so I guess that ties into what you were saying earlier. So that first step being acknowledging it. So it sounds like that, having that awareness, which is what I always tell my clients, the first step to anything is awareness. But then where from there? So, they recognize, okay, this is a me thing. Now what?
Yeah, so it could be that you enjoy your own company. It is okay for your partner for them to allow someone else to enjoy their company. I say, right now, if someone flirts with my husband, have at it. That means I got a good trophy over there, right? If he's enjoying the company in the space, if it's making him smile, he's enjoying it without being disrespectful, right?
Sure.
I'm like, have at it. Let the woman flirt with him. Let the guy, give him a compliment. They should, right? That means I picked a great guy. So it's really acknowledging it, being okay with certain things, but also working on my own emotions about insecurity. So if I feel like I need to, and some people might not like my response, but I'm gonna say it, okay? If I feel like I need to go to the gym, eat differently, go see a mental health counselor, work on my finances, work on my career to make me feel good about myself, then I need to do that. If I need to pleasure myself, I need to pleasure myself to let myself know I'm sexy.
Yeah, that's such a good topic. Let's go down that, not necessarily the pleasuring yourself part, but let's go down the topic of the taking care of yourself part, because I talk with clients about that all the time in terms of like, okay, so there's this misconception or there's this, I don't know, that's not even the right, it's like this expectation that we should just love our partners for who they are, which yes, okay, fine. I'll give you that to a certain extent. But also, just because we love our partners for who they are does not mean that we are necessarily always attracted to them, or that you get into a relationship with somebody that looks a certain way or that has a certain lifestyle and then they change that. Well, part of what built that chemistry is you were attracted to, whatever that was, the aesthetic, those things. What are your thoughts around that? Because I'm pretty big on the fact that if your partner maybe is asking something of you to be different because they're not attracted to something, then that doesn't mean they don't love you. That's worth taking. You like, I'm like,
look at you like, ooh, let me step on this line right there. Well, let me ask you this question. Liz, do you feel like you look the same way when you were 21?
No, absolutely not. And so I don't think the aging part is the issue.
But your body, but like you physically change over time, right?
Well, I mean, for the better, but yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like you should, right? You should look. Your body is going to evolve over time. Your interests, your desires, your passions, they should evolve over time. And good couples, I hate to say that word, couples that are able to stay in a long-term relationship and it's meaningful, is they pay attention. they pay attention as their partner changes, evolves, their desires, and they start to adapt. They start to adapt with their partner so that they can show up and meet their partner's needs. Not all their needs, because you're a human. Like, you're not, God, so you can't do that. But you do as much as you can to meet their needs so that they can be satisfied with you and within the relationship.
Okay, so what does that look like?
So that might mean if they want to relocate to a different city, you all move to a different city. If they are into something different physically, if they want you to gain weight, lose weight, if they want you to wear your hair a certain way, if they want you to dress a little different. My husband buys me clothes and I'm like, oh my God, I hate that. I hate it. But I will wear it in the house. And if he invites me to a work function, I will throw it on and go. He thinks I look great in it. He thinks I look great in it. I'm trying to please him. I take my mask off, I take my pride off, and I wear it. But when I want to put what I want to put on, I will put what I want to put on later. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, so where's the line? Because you know people are yelling at their podcast right now as they're hearing us talk about this. Like, where is that line between, like, yes, I'm willing to do X, Y, and Z to make my partner happy, but then at what point is it like, no, like, I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm like, you can't keep dictating how I wear my hair, how I dress, all of those things.
So you ask yourself the question, and I always say explore it, because in a relationship, I feel like nothing is off limits around discussing and exploring. If you're going to be with someone, everything should be on the table. Talk about it. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but if you explore it and you try it, and afterwards you feel some type of shame, some sense of worthlessness, some sense of I am being conquered and overpowered, don't do it.
Sure.
Don't do it. If you feel afterwards like happiness, oh, I made him smile, oh, I can do this, then you continue with it. But if you feel those other feelings, that it's not for you. And that might mean that you might not be compatible with your partner, or he or she might need to go somewhere else to get what they need.
Yes, I love that point, and so important. Just because your partner wants something that you don't want to comply with, or that's different than what you like or your preference, does not make that a red flag. Right. It just means it could be a compatibility issue. And so I talk about that with my clients all the time, acceptance or change. So if I'm telling you, this is how I want you to start dressing, Lamont, so if you want to be with me, I need you to wear this. And you're like, girl, that ain't happening.
Right.
Then I can say, like, okay, well, I love him anyway, so I'm going to figure this out. Or I can say, well, then that's a compatibility issue. Obviously, how you dress is such a minimal example of this.
Yes, right.
But you always have that choice that you can either accept what they're asking for, or you can decide it's not a good fit. Yeah.
Sometimes it could be about like spirituality.
Sure.
Right? Like, I want you to do this, and you're like, ooh, that's deep. That's a deep conversation, and that's something that you might not be flexible on. So It's having the conversation and saying, hey, you may need to, attend this faith institution with your friends instead. I can't do that. Like, or maybe I'll just go once a year when you all have a concert and I'll come and listen. But those are the things that you have to feel like that you can compromise on, right?
Sure.
Without going against your values. Because if one of your values is spirituality and you're like, and you all differ on that, you make ways that you can exist together without shaming each other, without forcing the other person to do what you want to do. Because at the end of the day, if you do that, you're going to end up breaking up at some point.
Yeah, and checking in on that shame, such a great point as well. So even for someone, sexual preferences. So, when it comes to somebody's more into kink, if someone's is more vanilla, and just because it's their preference, but then let's say your partner keeps like, hey, just try this new position, just try this new toy, just try this whatever with me. and you do so, but then checking in on that shame, like you were describing a few minutes ago, like I think that that's another really important area of doing that. And then also assessing if it does come down to a compatibility issue. But I think that people really end up, engaging in self-betrayal, especially when it comes to sexual activities and how they please their partner.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, in this society that we live in, we have been taught like sex should only look like a certain way.
Yeah.
And sex sometimes is really reserved for men's pleasure and for women to just to kind of exist. And so I always say, challenge what you have been taught, right? Mm. Where did you learn that from? Is that still serving you? If it's not, it's okay to have a conversation with yourself, with your higher power, and say, yeah, that was for somebody back in the 1800s or 1600s. It's just no longer exists now. And they probably were doing it the same thing back then.
And there is so much shame, specifically around that topic. And as you're bringing up these gender differences, like there is that expectation of performance for men, and then really like the aesthetics or how you're showing up as a woman. Mm-hmm. And that these things that come into the bedroom that take away from the pleasure and really make it a lot more performative. But then circling it back around to jealousy, I think that jealousy becomes active in that way too. I'm not talking about in terms of infidelity, but even when you're thinking about your partner with somebody previously, the previous partners, or maybe if your partner is really into kink and you're not, and then thinking about they have had somebody who's done that with them in the past or would be willing to do that in the future.
Yeah. So you're thinking that like you have to measure up to the ex because the ex did those things, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not into that. One of the things I say, and I'm sure you might appreciate this, is that if your partner is bringing it up, that is great, because that means your partner is not, they trust you with it.
Right.
They trust you to say, hey, we can have this conversation, instead of lying to you, talking about you behind your back with their friends, instead of resenting you or thinking you're not into them, because that's going to build jealousy on their part, because they're going to say, hey, I'm trying to talk about this, or I at least tried to nudge you to this and you didn't like it. So there's something wrong with me, right? Or there's something, your sexual desires or something wrong. So they're insecure. That's going to lead to arguments throughout the relationship.
How do you suggest that people bring up this topic? So something that I discovered, and I'm fully aware, and beating a dead horse how often I talk about this, because it blew my mind when I discovered it. Mm. People don't talk about their sex life. Like, I don't know if you're aware of that, but like people do not talk about sex. So whether they've been in a relationship for 10, 20 years, whether they just started dating, I don't. And so everyone says to me like, well, you're a therapist, so of course you talk about it. And I'm like, no, but like, therapist or not, people should be like, what do you like? What do you want? How do you want it? When do you want it? Like, no one's talking about that. How do you suggest talking about it?
Right, because people make assumptions that like sex should look a certain way, or because the last time you did something that was enjoyable, right? Or you both finished. So it was like, I guess you have to. Right. So, but it's like, no, the longer you're together, there are, I would say, things you might need to do to freshen up that experience, right? Sure. So I would say, have the conversation, find some games like Truth or Dare or some card games that will have probing questions to your partner about like their desires, their kinks.
Was that pun intended or no pun intended on that?
I don't know.
Okay, well, just checking in on that probing question of yours.
But they got to check in on stuff. No.
Exactly. See? Okay, well, I stick you a few minutes ago, so I guess however we want to look at it.
Yes. But you got to do stuff. You got to do something that's different, especially if you've been together for more than 5-10 years. Like, check in with your partner. let's do something different. It might mean you go into a vacation, into a new hotel room. You won't even know how much a difference a hotel room like freshens things up different from your regular bedroom.
It's so true.
And if you add children into the mix where you're like, oh, they can hear us. So you know, do something that is different that is going to make you both feel sexy.
Yeah. But so, and I agree with all of that, but even getting to that initial conversation and bringing back in, as you're talking about, the societal norms or the expectations, the etiquette around sex, so to speak, that we don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, you know, in our generation especially, and then older generations, it's becoming more common maybe to talk about in the younger generations. But as you and I are sitting with clients that are probably around our age, and they struggle with, you know, like, we don't talk about sex. My parents didn't talk to me about sex. Like, I wonder, like, how to even make that comfortable enough. So, like, I've had a couple clients where I'm like, start by sending a text to your partner. And I mean, these are partners they've been with for a long time, but saying like, yo, babe, I like when you touch me here, is like, the craziest thought. Like, that would just never
and your partner can quickly be like, wait a minute, is someone else touching you there? Like, what is going on? Like, the jealousy creeps in and you're like, no, I just want to, you know, do something a little different. I like the text message. I also think you can try with different movies, not porn. I'm not saying porn is great, but I'm saying like there are different like shows that talk about like your sexual desires. And you can find them on Netflix or Hulu, whatever it is. And you all can just be happy to be watching it. And then be like, hey, babe, what do you think about that?
Did you watch Goop?
I did not watch Goop, but I did watch How to Build a Sex Room.
Oh, as did I. What did you think about that?
We're going to get one downstairs.
I'm about to build a sex room. That's what I thought about it.
Yes, that'll be my Valentine's Day gift.
Do you have space? Like,
yeah, we have a whole bunch of space. We're gonna build something down there. Yes.
I like it.
I'll send you the finished product.
I hope so. You should look into Goop though, because I love that you give that suggestion. I gave that exact suggestion to a couple client a few weeks ago. So Gwyneth Paltrow is that who it is? I think, is that the Goop one? I think maybe. Anyways, so I think it's on Netflix or Hulu, but it's a really good series that goes through like different types of turn-ons. So whether it's sensuality or it's kink or it's, you know, it talks about different turn-ons. It talks about reasons why people get disconnected. And so that's a great point that you sit there with your partner and that you hope can create some conversation.
It should spark up things. And if you notice your partner is a little uncomfortable, right? And I think this is the part where things go left because with jealousy comes judgment, right? Mm-hmm. So your partner, you can ask your partner a question and your partner might say, you know what, in their head, I don't want to share this because I might feel judged. So instead of like getting a scrunchy face or saying, you're into that, I always say, ask 3 questions. Oh, tell me more about that. Where'd you learn that from? When'd you start liking that? That'll open up someone because it shows that you're genuinely interested in hearing their viewpoint and their experience instead of judging them. And if you judge a man, he is going to shut down from the door and he can tell your body language as well.
Well, and that goes for a woman too, okay?
Yes. Y'all go like, did he turn left? What did he do?
Well, especially when women are more into kink or more into, things that are not typical. I don't even know.
Not just missionary.
Right. Hey, and there's nothing wrong with missionary, but yes, like when people are into these things that are just different, that are out of the norm of typical conversation, it does seem that there's more judgment on women.
Yes.
For having those preferences, right? And so I guess where my mind goes when you're saying those questions, like if somebody were to ask me like, well, where'd you learn that? Or who'd you do it with? I'd be like, I don't know. You want to know all that. Like,
but there's that, then that, so, right. So then you're like, oh, if I tell him it was the guy, 3 guys before, then he's going to be like, well, how many did you all do? How many, right? He wants to know your body count. And so that's that judgment that comes up. But if you model that for him, when you're like, okay, I'm going to tell you this. I don't want you to talk no shit on me, and I don't want you to judge me. And then he'll say, okay, you know what, Liz, let me open up to you too. I'm into X, Y, and Z. Or it didn't get up that one time because, right? So the men can start to talk about like their vulnerabilities as well.
Yeah, no, and that is a really good point. And I think that opening up that dialogue really, I mean, and it helps with the jealousy as well, because if you can be, the more open you can be, the less it feels like that's being hidden. And I think that really helps with the jealousy. What is your thoughts? So when we talk about jealousy tying in with body count, what are your thoughts about sharing body counts?
Oh, I stopped counting years ago. So
stop sharing.
so I can accurately say, you know what? Yeah, I don't know. So I think we've been taught, and women they get the brunt of this, that if you have more than 1 or 2, then they call you names. I think it's just like saying F that. Like if you're sexually liberated, if you were participating in those sexual acts because you were enjoying it, like that. If you love it, I love it too as well, right?
Right.
So, yeah. So I say it's okay to assess your partner's views about that first, but like, hey, what are your thoughts about like this actress? She said she had all these sexual partners. If he says she's a whore and she's not married, she can't marry anybody, he has answered the question for you. No need to share.
Well, no need to stay either, by the way.
Right. Run for the hills. Check, please.
What are your thoughts though when people ask that? Do you think that's an inappropriate question to ask?
It's a horrible first date question.
I would say so. I would hope anyone who's listening, I hope that's a freaking given here.
Right. So that's like, maybe like a 3rd, 4th date where like you're trying to have intimate conversations. I might respond and be like, well, tell me how's that information going to help this situation? Yes. Oh, because I don't date, guys or women who have more than 10, or because I like a woman who's more sexually experienced. Oh, so you're listening for like why, and then you can respond appropriately.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because that was my thought too. Like, what is the value of asking that question? But I guess, I don't know. I guess I would have to sit with that in terms of like what their answer was, because I can be open to different preferences and things like that. So I guess I don't know why that would rub me the wrong way if they had a preference on my count. Like, go ahead.
Yeah. Or like if you're dating a guy, right? You're going to date with a guy and he goes, Liz, what are your thoughts about a guy who's been with another guy?
All right, wait, are you asking me?
right. And then your face is like, Lord, today, where is this going? Like, is he bi? Is he gay? Like, but it's. I think it's about like taking your time. And again, like I said before, it is fixing your face. Like, whoa, good question. Tell me like a little bit more about that. That is going to make a guy open all the way up. If you fix your face like, I don't know, and, he's going to be like, I was just asking because, it's Atlanta. Right.
It's a common question out here. We're all asking. Yeah, no, that's such a good point though. Like, and it's so crazy, like even having these conversations of how, evolved that I think I am as a human. And I'm like, okay, hold on. There are things that would make me have to fix my face and really kind of like have to sit with that. And again, it goes back to exactly what you said a little while ago. Where did I get that message from? Mm-hmm. Why would some of those things bother me? Why would they like spark that for me? Because of the messages that we've received, for sure.
Yeah. And I love, I like, my husband is older, right? So I like someone who has experienced life, who has had time to challenge all of those messages, who has been able to sit with, a book, with a therapist, with their higher power, and say, you know what? I know that's what I was taught. I'm going to write my own story about certain things, right? And I think that's when you find people are most happy. So, a person who, and people are listening, don't hate me, but like if you're in your early 20s, that is a time that you should be exploring life, figuring out who you are. I don't think I'm happy I didn't get married in my early 20s because I'm a different person than I was.
Sure.
Yes.
For sure. And so I got married at 18 and see? And
oh God, I would have been divorced 5 times.
I mean, yep. But I stayed married for 18 years, so I didn't get divorced 5 times, but we did though. And we talk about that we grew up together. And on some accounts, I'm like, okay, well, being with him during those years probably did protect me from wiling up too, much in the way that, though I just could have saved that for later, but that's an episode for a different day. But anyway, I do agree that also there was so much growing up we did together, but so many formative years that were kind of stripped because of that. And so obviously everyone has their own lifestyle and how they approach us is differently, but I agree that those early 20s are so important for exploration and even knowing what you're into or what you want.
Yes. And enough time away from your upbringing, like, living in the world, you going through struggle, you reading, therapy, learning, so that you can say, this is who I am, independent of my environment that has tried to steer me a certain way.
Yeah. And talking about that in terms of like therapy, and when we go back to addressing the jealousy, because, I think that typically, I would say 9 times out of 10, people who are jealous, they don't want to show up that way. That is coming from insecure attachment styles. That's coming from previous trauma. And even a lot of people think that jealousy issues come from experiencing like infidelity in previous relationships, but really it can go all the way back to primary caregivers. And if you were not given the attention that you needed, if your emotional needs were not met in the way that you needed, then that when you do have that in adulthood and you feel like it's threatened in any kind of way, that creates the reactivity. And so, going back to the beginning of the episode, when you said like probably once a week, I think that is so like, first and foremost, let's really normalize that getting jealous is not the issue. It's our reaction to the jealousy that becomes the issue.
Right. And when you talk about like the once a week, and that could be because I was traveling way too much and I miss my husband.
Yeah.
And it could be we haven't had sex in 2 weeks. And I'm like, right. It could be we had an argument, and jealousy will come up, and it's really about my needs. And if I don't say, this is what I need, or set the environment for me to get those needs met with my partner, then the person showing my husband attention or my partner attention is going to rub me the wrong way. If I'm not succeeding in life, anything will rub me the wrong way. So it's really taking ownership on making sure your needs are met.
Right. And going back to how is that communicated? So if it's using the I statements, I'm feeling lonely this week. I'm feeling disconnected.
Yes, I miss you.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. It's so true. And that for sure would activate those feelings. And so being able to express that, being aware of your reaction, so knowing how to regulate. What are some regulation techniques that you give for your clients when they are, because jealousy is a trigger. So when somebody does feel triggered, they start to get activated. How do you help them to regulate?
Don't respond immediately. Take a moment to take a breath, take a walk around the block, ask for a moment to process things, because you could be in the middle of a conversation and be like, you know what? Thank you for sharing that. I need a moment, right? Because sometimes your flippant response or your knee-jerk response is not really the best one. It's going to come across sometimes as you're blaming your partner for something externally that is really going on with you. So do that. And then also talk about, like in your head, when I say talk about, like talk to yourself and say, what is going on with me right now? What am I experiencing? What am I lacking? What did I see? What did I experience? What's going on with my heart, with my blood pressure? And then allow yourself to cool down. And once you identify that, hey, I noticed you did this. I felt this when you did that. This makes me, whenever you do this, it makes me feel upset, or it makes me feel less of, or it makes me feel like you don't desire me. Concrete, very specific. So your partner then can hear that and address it by saying, this is what happened, or I don't intend for you to feel that way. Here's how I can respond differently.
Yeah, so important that checking in. That's something that I do commonly, of checking in on, like, where is this reaction coming from? Like, what is creating it? What is causing it? What is the narrative that I'm creating around this situation that I'm having this reaction right now? And I think even this being on the flip side as well. So for the partner feeling jealous, this is so important. But then let's also add to that the partner who's receiving that their partner is jealous. These things apply as well, because that can be really triggering. So if you have a partner who's jealous a lot, and you feel like they're trying to control you, or you feel powerless to that, or you feel like you're never good enough, this information also applies on that end.
Yes. You can say, you know what? This really is not me. Like, my partner might need to do some counseling, or my partner needs to get over the ex. I'm not your ex. Some of the behaviors that I do that remind you of your ex, I'm not going to go down that path, right? Yeah. So that might be a sign that your partner needs to do some self-work, and you should feel empowered to support your partner to get that help, instead of constantly changing who you are, because that could be dizzy and confusing and just like a roller coaster, because you don't know who you're going to get.
Right. So I agree that if somebody is getting triggered by, this may or may not be projection on my end right now, so just bear with me.
We'll see, Liz. We'll see.
I agree that if you're getting triggered by something your ex did, that it is your responsibility to get healing and to work on that. I agree.
Yeah.
But so let's say, do you think that there's value in the partner also being sensitive to that? So if I know that the person I'm dating, maybe if I use a certain tone, I know that can be triggering because it reminds him of feeling powerless in his upbringing, right? So that's on him, because that was his upbringing. But also there is a little bit of onus on me to be sensitive to that.
That has to be communicated. It has to be communicated. It has to be a way to say, okay, I know this certain tone triggers you, reminds you of X, Y, and Z in the past. Get it. I hear it. If that happens, let's come up with a game plan, because I might not notice that my tone is there at that time. So we need a word, or I might not care. I can't pull it back, right? So I need a word, a signal to be like, pineapple.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you all navigate that. I think one of the things that helps couples navigate long-term relationships is really handling conflict really well, because conflict is always going to happen. So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to rub each other the wrong way. But if you come up with a game plan and you start to practice those things, it helps with conflict. And then when jealousy arises, you can get over that.
Yeah. No, I love that. Such an important point, because if your ultimate goal is connection and safety for your partner, even when you do fuck shit up, if that is your goal, you're willing to be receptive to that when they say, like, hey, pineapple. And it's like, okay, it's too far. Like, we got to regroup. We got to reconnect. And I mean, that's such a great point, because we're all going to mess up. But if you're willing to check it, when it gets to that point, such a game changer for the longevity and the quality of your relationship.
Yeah. And the thing that will be great is that, like, 5-10 years later, you can sit back, have a cocktail, and just laugh at those moments. Like, oh my goodness, I can't really believe, like, I was in my feelings about that. Right. Right. And, that's what couples aim to do. Yeah. So I think successful couples, if you talk about it, if you're proactive, if you take that daggone mask off, like, take the mask off, you will do so much better. So much better.
So true. Taking the mask off is so scary, but makes such a difference for that connection.
Yep.
Lamont, I appreciate our conversation. You are hilarious. You are insightful. You are brilliant. Where can people find you?
Sure. Thank you. This has been a good key, we say, like a good conversation, right? So I'm a dating coach and a matchmaker. People can find me at my website, betterwaytomeet.com.
Perfect. And what about, did you say social?
Oh, sure. Listen, now, if you go on my social media account, okay, I host a dating show on Wednesday nights on Instagram. The handle is The Gay Dating Coach.
Perfect. And you see clients, I would imagine, virtually all over the country. Is that?
Yes, I work with guys all over the United States, some in the UK as well. And I do some dating coaching for a handful of women just to teach them how to flirt and stay in some of those relationships.
Very good. Well, Lamont, I appreciate your time. This has been a pleasure. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, Liz.
Had so much fun with Lamont today, probing into our private lives, even if it did get a little sticky. Thank you all for hanging out with me today on Relatable Relationships Unfiltered. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and find me on Instagram at Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick.